All right, Playbook fam, I'm here and I'm gonna give you what I'm calling Kyle's playing career timeline. So I'm gonna be looking over to my right because I have my list down. I think I covered pretty much everything. There might be one or two things that I'm missing, but I'm trying to give you again perspective of what I did and what I went through as a youth player. And then I will add, like later on, not in this video, but corrections and things that I would do differently. So let's start off. So I was born in 92 and I started playing soccer, and wasn't really playing, but in the backyard with my mom and my dad at 3, so in 95. So then I move into recreational soccer probably in 96, 4 or 5 years old. I play on a team or whatever and make through that, right? The next year we probably started, in fact, I remember this, we started like technical training at our club, which was called Gunston Soccer Club. Was there, this is in the DMV area, and they had some like extra sessions you could jump in on for the programs that help like find and evaluate players for competitive. So did that for about a year and a half, went into, in 99, into competitive, again under Gunston, and was like U9, U8 competitive. I think it was actually U9. And did that for about a year just to kind of get into the flow of it. Ended up doing extra training about 2 times a week. On top of that, because we practiced 3 days a week, but I would have a coach that I would train extra on the side on top of that twice a week. In 2001, we moved into U10, and this is with Lee Mount Vernon. And we actually have a video somewhere, I'll have to find it, where and I actually think this was U11, the video, but playing 11v11, and the team that we have is actually pretty decent. And I'll have to find that and show it to you guys, but that's where we were at. Then we go into 2 years later, we're talking 2003, I started playing 2 years up. So my coach at the time had a team that was 2 years older than us, and me and like 2 other players would go and play, train 2 years up. So again, we're talking about U12, they were U14, and we were playing 2 years up. And I think that was a great benefit to me because now I'm not just playing my age. I would train 3 days a week still, but train 2 other days with this group. And again, I'm playing against bigger, faster, stronger kids. So it was a constant push, which looking back on, I'm like, wow, that was actually a great experience. So I think that helps a lot. Then as well, I did this before as well, but I'll talk about it now. ODP, really got involved more into the ODP program. At the time, ODP was basically the best way to be scouted for national team programs. I don't want to go into ODP too much. It's not the same now. But that's the pathway it was, at least at the time. So moving on, we now are in 2005. This is right before I went into high school, really 2 years before. At U13, I went down to Brazil and trained with a club called Palmeiras. I was there for a couple of weeks and ended up coming back home shortly after. And this was actually before all the rules with FIFA changed, where you could go and trial with a club. Now, obviously, the rules are different where kids from other countries are not allowed to do that to the same extent, which, again, we'll talk about in another video. But the rules used to be different. So the following year, maybe 6 months later, I ended up going and meeting Coach Joel, who I've talked about multiple times. And he's at one of the biggest clubs in France. And I actually passed his testing to be evaluated to go to his academy at Olympique Lyonnais. So went there the year after doing the testing. Did very, very well. I was told that I was at the level of the academy, but they're not looking for somebody at the level. They're looking for somebody better if they were going to invest the money to bring them over, because they could go get a player locally within France for a much cheaper price than investing money to bring a player over from another country, which, again, looking back on it, I can understand. But I came back from there going, hey, I'm at the level of the academy. That's great. I'm good. Right? So I actually felt like that actually dropped my work ethic a little bit, because when I came back, I'm like, hey, I'm too good to be here. And I didn't have somebody, kind of on me being like, yo, that's not okay. You need to get better. So just trying to be honest with you. And actually, interestingly enough, I actually had to go there twice. The first time when I went to OL, I actually broke my collarbone, my left one of the first days, if not the first day. So I ended up having to fly home and then came back a couple months later after recovering. So very interesting that I had to go through that. In 2008, I actually moved to DC United. This was right before the DA came out. DA is pre-MLS Next, which was under U.S. Soccer Federation. So was involved with them. They did some stuff that I didn't agree with in my family, so I ended up leaving and went to a program called McLean. McLean Youth Soccer, actually. So moved there for the U16 year and played there for actually 3 years, but this, again, it was right before the DA came out. So I was there, finished the year, and then the DA popped. And actually, there's one part that I missed, but basically, during this period, I was actually part of the ODP program, got into the regional team, and this is the level right below the national pool because you have 4 regions, or at least you did at the time, I don't know about now. And the 4 regions would always send their best players to the national team pool. So I was always on the bubble, at least at that point, of national team pool. Right after this, the DA release, because I remember I got the invitation to join the DA. And at that time, you could not do ODP and you could not do DA. So you had to make a choice what you wanted to do. I took the DA route because it was the new, FOMO, the next thing that was coming out. So I ended up doing that. So I played DA for 2 years, 2009 and 2010. 2009 was actually a great year personally for me. We had a very, very good team. There were some rules and stuff about the games. Like I think we had like a 23-man roster for the season. But that's what I went through. And then was actually planning to go back to Europe after that. And I didn't talk about this a lot yet, but I ended up getting hurt a lot. So actually, I broke this collarbone once. I've broken this one twice. I've had a bunch of knee problems, injury problems. And to be honest with you, it's because I didn't take care of my body. Separate point, but just trying to give you factual information that happened to me. So what I ended up doing was I graduated high school in 2010, and my family and I made the decision to take a gap year, which means it's like the period between high school and college. So I decided to take a year off in terms of not going into school. I took some part-time classes, I got a job, and I still played for the DA to try and physically develop. And this is one thing that I wish I did, knowing now that I didn't know then, and that was to go play adults. Always played my age or played 1 year up or whatever. Never really played adults. And this is something that I wish I experienced because it would only help me have developed to go into the next step, again, going into college or the program that, gets missed out on a lot. So did my gap year, finished the gap year, 2011, went to college. Was not my first choice to go to college, by the way. And I will make a separate video on college recruiting and talk about that process that I went through. But in this one, I don't want to highlight that. I just want to talk about what happened. So 2011, went to college at St. Leo University, which is in Florida. And again, it was not my first choice to go to college. Wanted to go to Europe, but again, I ended up getting hurt. I actually tore my right groin muscle. And I made the decision because I heard in college they make you get super fit. So I was like, hey, I'll go to college for 6 months or a year. And then I'm out again. I want to go to Europe. So what happened was right after the first season, so we finished in October-ish, maybe it was November for playoffs. Finished, we go into the spring season, and I start getting a ton of pain in my left knee. And it's right under the knee. It's actually now the patella tendon. But I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know what was going on. I saw a bunch of different doctors, didn't know what the problem was. And again, I'll save this for a different story, but it took me a long time to figure it out. I was constantly in tremendous pain, and it really affected me. But moving forward, graduated in 2015 from St. Leo. So I finished all 4 years there. I got a business degree, ended up doing an internship back in the DMV area. And then a guy saw me play actually in an adult league, and he's like, hey, what's your story? What's your deal? What's going on? They're like, you can still play. And I'm like, well, at the time I was like 21, 22. And this is again, 2015. So they're like, look, let's take it to Europe. Boom. Went to France. Again, I was right outside Saint Etienne playing Division 4. And I'll talk about this story at another time. But it was way different than what life is here in the United States for most people. So that was a complete shock. And it really opened my eyes to, how the world works for football if you're not at the elite level. And that was game changing for me. And at the time it was very hard. But looking back on it, it was one of the best experiences of my life. And even got to play in the Coupe de France, which is the French Cup. Got 2 games out of that, which was great. Ended up getting knocked out. And unfortunately, shortly after 2016, returned home with an injury. My left calf muscle had a problem. And I'm like, look, I'm done because I had so many injuries that I was just like, I think it's time for me to kind of retire. So I still played. I got into coaching at that point. And actually, I did an event for futsal for USYF. For scouting, I actually had to play in a game. And one guy came up to me, he's like, dude, why don't you still play? And I'm like, I mean, I do, but not, I don't play on an actual team. I just do stuff on my own and whatnot. And he's like, look, I have a connection for you to get on the national team for futsal. And I'm like, okay, well, what do I need to do? Boom, connection made. They had a training camp, went to the training camp, which was actually in Florida, did very well. And they invited me into the national team program. And basically from there, we had a World Cup qualifier in Mexico City. So we went to Mexico City for, I believe it was 3 games. We played against Mexico, we played against Canada, and we played against Curacao. So we lost to Mexico 6-2. We lost to Canada 3-2, and we beat Curacao, I believe it was 4-0 or 4-1 or something like that. I don't remember the score off the top of my head. I did score in that game actually, but that was a great experience. And unfortunately at that moment we did not qualify for the World Cup, but twist of events happened and we ended up going to the World Cup. We found out, honestly, 3 days before, so we're talking 72 hours before the actual tournament. We get a call, hey, we got to head down to Misiones, Argentina. We went. We actually finished 12th in the world, which was kind of cool. And we played 4 games. Game number 1, we played against Nepal. And actually what's interesting is we arrived the day of the first game. So we played against Nepal, beat them 2-1. We played against Spain. And they were phenomenal, by the way. They knocked us out of the park. We lost 11-0. And interestingly enough, that was the first time I was ever in a game and my head was spinning because of how fast they played. Like, I was out of my depth and I'm like, wow, levels above what I could play at that moment. Maybe I could have got there with consistent training, but that level was fast. Ended up then playing France, lost 4-3. And then we played one final game against Curacao and lost that one as well. I think the final score was like 9-4. So again, great experience. Very happy with what I got with that. And that kind of summarizes my playing experience, going through the entire system from top to bottom. And one thing I do want to highlight is one piece, 2 pieces really. One is that I was actually one of the captains for the national team at the World Cup, which was great. And then the second point is I didn't mention a lick of high school. I didn't talk about high school at all. And I played high school all 4 years. I was on varsity for my high school in Virginia. And it's just not a good experience. It's not what you need to go to the next level. Too many games, not enough training, not enough consistent level of play. The level's not high enough. You're not going to really get recruited from it. In fact, I had a buddy of mine, top Division I coach for 15 years, and he said the following: if you play high school, don't tell a Division I coach that because you will be cut from their list immediately. So take that for what it's worth. That's my story, and see you in the next video.